Thanks. Yeah, this is one of the problems when you travel and you meet people who you get on with, and then suddenly they come back to haunt you. Um, Sao Tome and Principe was not my idea, I have to say. It was a mutual friend or a friend, and was very keen to go because it was somewhere he'd wanted to go. It's got a lot of endemic birds. It was not too far, theoretically. But unfortunately, him and his wife had to drop out, so that we were going to go with my friend, our friend Kat, who Steve also knows. So it ended up being the two of us and the rest of a group that we did not know. We went in September 2019. It was the first time that this trip had been run. So just to tell you a little bit about it. So we went with Nature Trek. It was, like I said, their first Sao Tome trip. Advertised as 12 days, but actually 3 of these actually were travel days, which I think, being Scottish, I think I always find that a bit irritating. It's really 9 days if you're traveling for 3. So the first day, in effect, an evening, well, a late afternoon, but ended up being evening flight to Lisbon, overnight in Lisbon, and then Lisbon to Sao Tome. But bizarrely, you have to touch down in Accra. So then we go to our lodge there. We have 2 days in Sao Tome, and then 2 full days in Sao Tome, then fly on to Principe, in one of these ridiculously short flights. And then we have 4 full days there, and then fly back to Sao Tome, where we have an afternoon birding, and then the use of a day room, and then back overnight to Lisbon, and then the 12th day back to Manchester. So actually, it's an interesting split because there are actually more endemic birds on Sao Tome than there are on Principe. Yeah, although we spent more time on Principe. So just because I found a map that I could draw on. First day we fly, we're very delayed from Manchester. We get into Portugal, into Lisbon about midnight. So we don't meet anybody else on the trip because they've all gone to bed. And it's just the 2 of us flying in from the north. And then the following day, we fly from Portugal to Accra, capital of Ghana, and then on to Sao Tome. As you said, almost, I guess, smack on the equator. So we are of the understanding that this is a really good time. This is September. This is a really good time of year weather-wise to go. But I'll let you judge that later. One of my friends said I must not go on about the weather, but I will. So on day 2, we arrive in Sao Tome, and this is Omali Lodge, which, as you can see, actually looks like it might have some blue sky, and we did see some blue sky there. But by the time we get there, it's in your room, it's getting dark, or it is dark. You know, get showered, go and meet the group, have dinner, and crash, with the prospect of a full day. And hopefully, at that point, we were quite excited about the prospect of seeing a lot of lifers and a lot of endemics. So we spent the day 3, the morning, in the grounds of the lodge. What I've done is, for each day, kind of say a bit about what we did, and then what birds we saw. So in the grounds of the lodge, we were picking up, the first bird I saw was a Sao Tome Prinia, and you're just like, oh, this is going to work. This is going to be really good. This first endemic, not even really woken up yet. But we also had Newton sunbird, Sao Tome thrush, and then some waxbills and canaries, weavers, palm swifts and regular swifts, and some fairly vociferous straw-coloured fruit bats who don't have to bicker with each other. So it's a bit overcast and grey, a bit early. So some of the photographs I will apologise for, but this is a Sao Tome Principe, Sao Tome Prinia even, which was around, every time you went out in the garden of the hotel, you would see them. They were fairly confiding. And I'm a bit fond of a prinia. I know I keep saying that I'm not really a birder, but that's a lie in some ways. I think if you're prepared to say you like prinias, you probably hoist with your own petard. Sao Tome thrush, in bad light, unfortunately. Again, really the only place we saw Sao Tome thrush pretty much was in the grounds of the hotel. Didn't see much of it out and about. But again, not the bird obviously in a hotel garden, I guess they're kind of used to people, but you could get reasonably close to them, certainly for photography, and with bins and scopes, it was really straightforward. Principe seed eater. So the Principe seed eater comes in 3 different subspecies, even though it's an endemic. There's one on Sao Tome, which is this one, Tomensis. There's one on Principe, and there's one on this ridiculously shaped island called Jockey's Cap, because it looks like a jockey's cap, and there's one just on there. But like, I suppose a lot of seed eaters, this is, if you're into pretty birds, it's small and brown. But again, it's another endemic, so you've got to be nice to it. Common waxbills in the grounds. Common waxbills are pretty. I think they look. I particularly like their highwayman mask. But they were around in flocks with the blue waxbill. And these are, as it's got darker or more overcast, the straw-coloured fruit bats. I'm quite partial to fruit bats because they're noisy and bicker and smelly and active, and you can actually identify them because you see them in daylight, unlike most bats, which, unless you've got a bat detector, are quite tricky. So this is kind of all pre-breakfast, really. So then we head off into Sao Tome itself, so to Bom Sucesso, which was in lush farm country, a lot of not orchards but plantations of coffee plantations with scattered secondary forests, and we really start to see quite a lot of endemics here. So we come across black-capped spearops, which is possibly one of my favorites. We saw Sao Tome white-eye, the more seed eaters, the Sao Tome paradise flycatcher. We did see the thrush again. Sao Tome weavers, green pigeons, spine tails, giant sunbird, which is incredibly irritating because they tend to flit, and we only had fairly fleeting views, but it's entirely appropriately named. Sao Tome oriole and the cobra bobo, more of which later, because the cobra bobo was just jaw-dropping, but I will show you this in a minute. Sao Tome white eyes, pretty similar, I guess, to most white eyes that I've seen elsewhere. A lot more confiding than the Principe white eye would turn out to be, but just small flocks skulking in some, no idea what the plant is, sorry. I know that I have lists of all sorts of things, but plants and me, no. But in some fairly rank vegetation, you can see that it's looking a bit moist because it already is starting to be cloudy and a bit mizzly. This is the seed eater. I think, unfortunately, have I moved that? Yeah, so sorry, because basically it was the boxes were covering what they're writing. So Principe seed eater again, on, I think, a flame tree. So these are really nice trees, but again, a small brown seed eater, not the most exciting bird in the world, but an endemic, and it's a seed eater. I think it's a bit of falling, being nice for the underdog, I think. And then my favorite, the black cat spearops. They're just fun. They're kind of they're really entertaining. They flit around. They're let you take pictures, which is always nice if you've got a camera and you like a picture. But they're really small, and I suppose they're kind of they're the ones on Sao Tome, and the spear ups on Principe is totally different, completely different. They don't look remotely similar. And I think, and I stand to be corrected because I said I'm a bit more mammals than birds, but they're kind of in with the white eyes. But we saw them fairly regularly. And then the clouds coming in now, as you can see. So on the top left, Sao Tome green pigeons. The bigger pigeons were pretty skittish, so they tended to be in thick vegetation or flying by. Certainly the sort of island bronze-neck pigeons were just, that was it. The ones that would sit around were the African green pigeons, which is, you know, that's a great bird. I'm quite partial to green pigeons, but at the same time, I've seen African green pigeons a lot. On the right, the Sao Tome paradise flycatcher is just a great bird. It's pretty. It's got a fantastic blue eye ring, really shiny, glossy black feathers, and yeah, it's a great bird, as paradise flycatchers tend to be, I think. But again, we did not a bird we saw lots of. We maybe saw one or maybe two a day. And then the Sao Tome weaver at the bottom left. This is we're now in pretty low cloud. Well, we've gone up in elevation, but we're in pretty low cloud and cold and wet, and thinking, should have brought more fleeces. We then probably, I think, one of the endemics that just really performed for us on Sao Tome was the oriole. And I know it's a bit silly, but I always think orioles are going to be black and bright yellow, whereas this one is fairly olivey. It's got a bit yellow on the tail. But our local guide, I think, played a tape, and they were in, and you know, that was it. Tape off, and they just sang and looked at us and stayed around for ages. And you know, I think in terms of sightings, I think this was probably one of the best that we had of one of the endemics, because it was in fairly natural habitat, and you know, they were active, they were singing, and they're just a nice bird. I think nice big red eyes and pink bills. What's not to like? And this is Cobra Bobo, which is the Sao Tome Sicilian. And this was on the middle of the road we were walking back to the car on, and it's about a foot long, and I think how round what it would be like. Carrot, the average carrot thickness, and although I've seen I've seen a couple of Sicilians in South America, I've never seen one that is this brightly colored. I mean, it literally is banana yellow. And unfortunately, we didn't see the one in Principe because it is cyan blue. Would have been a good combo to have got. But yeah, I think that was, I know it's sacrilege, but I think that was my favorite thing we saw. As you can see, the weather has turned and it is now chucking it down, which it tended to do fairly frequently throughout. So then we adjourned back to the nearest town for lunch. So what I would say about Sao Tome was the accommodation was good. It was really comfortable. It was clean. It was you know, everything you would expect from a nice place to stay. En-suite facilities that were clean and functional. Really, really nice food. Sao Tome, the main crops seem to be well, chocolate and cocoa, chocolate and coffee. So there was certainly plenty of really good coffee. And when we went to the place for lunch, we had tremendous choices and really good fresh food. So we went looking around some cocoa plantations, and the main things we saw were Sao Tome weaver again, the giant weaver, which is, people shouldn't call things giant if they're not huge. And chestnut wing starling, it's only, I think, the only time we saw the chestnut wing starlings. But the Sao Tome weaver, we had ages with this particular bird, really acting like a nuthatch, just exploring this. You can see a bit in the bottom left picture where it was just lifting up bits of bark, just looking around for grubs and insects, and really was totally ignoring us. And we probably watched it for 20 minutes, half an hour. You know, everybody got great views, everybody got good pictures, everybody got pictures of the bird in it. But would have been nicer possibly in brighter light. But it was a really good bird to see. And you know, this log it's on the left, two pictures is on the ground, whereas the giant weaver tended to be up high, and then kind of I like the way it's looking on the right when it's kind of peering down. Alice said it was its beak, and it is bigger, but it's not. Yeah, it's not giant. It's not the size of a pigeon, but it's quite a chunky bird, I suppose. But again, not a bird we saw very often. Really, these were the best views we had on the first day, but and not particularly prolonged views. But you know, we got scopes on it, and obviously those of us with cameras got pictures. So, but again, giant weaver in the rain. So next day we went to, this was our schlep on Sao Tome. So we had expected, because the pre-departure information talked about the grading of the walks being A or B, which to my understanding is A is kind of like, oh, not quite downhill. Sorry, I thought I'd turned that off. Embarrassment. Yeah, so that, you know, it should be fairly flat, and we discovered that actually on this walk it was long, it was absolutely throwing it down, with weather, rain wise, and we were on fairly steep paths. There were, the age of our group were probably ranged from 50s, and there's probably 3 of us in our 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. But at least 2 of the guys, the older gentlemen in our group, could not do some of the walks. And in fact, this one, we ended up leaving half the group behind. So the aim of this was early start, drive down the east coast of Sao Tome to the Monte Carmo estate, sorry, typo, which is an oil palm plantation, and then to walk from the plantation up onto the Mount Carmo itself. And then after we'd done that, stop on the way back to look over a bridge, which is apparently good for birding as well. So this was really punishing walk. The aims were really to pick up the more elusive endemics. Bloody hell. Sorry, I'm just going to switch this off. It's just, you know, I have warned everybody I'm doing a talk tonight. Please don't phone me. I'm not going to be free until later, and everybody has decided to ring me. Sorry, I should have just given up and done that. But yeah, so the aim was to look for the ibis, to look for the Sao Tome grosbeak, the short tail, and the fiscal. And I suppose the owl, the Scops owl, would be another option. But we picked up Sao Tome green pigeon. The olive pigeon is a flyout by. The giant weaver again, we'd brief you, but we did see the ibis. We saw the oriole again, the paradise flycatcher, giant sunbird flitting, Principe seed eater, the grosbeak. We had the briefest view in Christendom. The short tail we heard, but didn't see, and then we saw the kingfisher later on. So the green pigeon we actually managed to get a view of. Again, I always think this one just looks like it's in a fur coat. It's so fluffy. The ibis we had great views of. We were just walking through the muddy trail, and it flew up, and they fly up and land in a tree, and then just look at you. Not the, and I've seen, I was saying earlier, I've seen crested ibis, and I've seen South American ibises, and ibises in Africa and India and stuff. That all look that are really pretty. It's a forest ibis, so it's a camouflage ibis, I guess. Again, we saw them sitting on the tree. We saw two separate birds. We saw two different ibis at two different occasions on the walk, but they tended to be, we'd see it fly, and then hopefully it would land somewhere where you could get a clear view of it. I think we did have our best paradise flycatcher this day. As you can see, actually the sun had come out, and it just shines. It's amazing. But then we saw, this is the better of the two ibis viewings we had. As you can see, it's been having a good old go in the mud. So it's beak, bill, I'm never quite sure which I'm supposed to say. Anyway, it's covered in mud. And it is very well camouflaged. If it's up trees or on the muddy forest floor, they're not particularly easy to see, even if you know where it is. At this point, we then reached a campsite, which I think has been used by some previous tour groups. I've read other reports, and I think if you want to see the owl, you have to camp there. It was, by this time, really quite heavy rain, and about half the group elected to stay there, and 5 of us went on. Fairly steep paths, slippy, muddy, up and down, and absolutely bucketing rain. So even, it gets to the point where there's no point in having waterproofs, because frankly, you're going to be wet through anyway. Again, like I say, we did not get anywhere near the fiscal. It wasn't heard. The guides our local guides were excellent, I have to say. Tried really hard, but they didn't hear it. The grosbeak tends to respond to a call, fly in, see who you are, and fly away without really hanging about. So we saw it for a few seconds. I mean, it was quite obvious where it was, but if you were looking the wrong way, you would have missed it. And like I say, the short tail, we all heard but didn't see. And given that I'm not an American, I think everybody's entitled to do it their own way, but it's not on my life list just because I've heard it. On the way back, we stopped at the bridge, and we saw the Sao Tome version of the kingfisher, but again, quite distant and quite far away. And I think also we were drenched and just wanted to get back and get in the shower and get dry. So again, the next day we are leaving. So we have time in the morning around the lodge. It's a really lovely sunny morning. And the sunbirds are absolutely displaying and loud and visible and gorgeous. And the lizards are out. So, I quite like reptiles, and it's an endemic skink. So, got to like it. So there is the Sao Tome skink, which is quite a pretty little thing, but there were loads of them, really common. The Sao Tome thrush out again in slightly better light, and blue waxbills just on the road by the hotel. But again, what's not to like? I know they're common. I know they're not perhaps super special, but I like them. And then just to prove that it's not all about mammals or indeed birds, Sao Tome skink I really like. We had mud skippers just in this ditch by the pool, and they got the most incredible jade eyes. They're just amazing, and spots and shiny. And pretty butterflies, and interesting looking dragonflies as well. Trying to identify these sort of insects is not easy because it's not like there's a book that goes the dragonflies of Sao Tome, but with a bit of I think over the years, because I'm pedantic and I like to have things labeled and I like to know what I've seen or what I've not seen, you can find enough places on the web that you can work it out. But yes, nice dragonfly and a nice butterfly. And then the Prinia in the sun. I mean, I love the bottom left picture. I just think he's just like, you're taking another picture. I love a bird or a mammal with attitude. And the Prinia is really cute. They're really active. They're always jumping down off, sitting the branch, dive down, pick something off the ground, back up again, almost flycatchery like. But they're great. It was a really nice morning's birding. And then, like I said, the Newton sunbird, this male, doing a lot of displaying, showing his amazingly fabulous iridescence, and just this is outside the building, the room next to mine in a nice shrub, and they were just great. Sunbirds are fab, I have to say. So then we fly over to Principe, which is less than an hour. It takes, the check-in's hysterical. It's kind of, you just go up and chat to somebody and that's you. And then we flew to Principe, like I say, an hour, and moved on to our base there, which is Roca Sundy, which is an old plantation where there's a lot of old buildings, and the rooms are fairly luxurious. The garden on the right was pretty much what it was like when we were there, but it was really nice. The food was just incredible. I mean, that vegetarians often traveling, that can be really boring, but the vegetarian food was great, as was the other food, and really nice, different leaders, but really great. And as I say, there were a lot more birds technically on Sao Tome, but Principe was fun. So we kind of went, when we got there, we had a look around. Principe weaver, different weavers, Timney parrots, which are sort of like African greys, bronze mannequins, the African green pigeon, blue-breasted kingfisher, Dorn's warbler or thrush babbler, depending on I think whatever taxonomy you like, the Principe sunbird, and a different bat for dinner, because of the dinner is on a terrace that's enclosed, and because it has lights and therefore insects, this bat came in, and we managed to identify it through some really shocking photographs and the color of its fur. So Timney parrot, as I say, very much like an African grey, but it's been split, is my understanding. The blue-breasted kingfisher, again, a really common bird on Principe. We saw it every day. And Principe weaver, which I have to say looks pretty fierce in both of these pictures. One looks like it's shouting at me, and the other one looks like it's scowling at me. But they're again in the hotel gardens, and round. The hotel had really, really good gardens. It worked really well for the birding side of things, particularly from that where these tables were. You could look down on them, which was great. So the next day is our first full day, and we're spend some time in the grounds. Then we go on the waterfall trail, and this is probably the hardest walk. And again, we end up leaving a couple of people behind before we even started, because they heard about what the trail was going to be like. They were told it was very steep, it was very muddy, but it did have a very big waterfall at the end. And we saw in the grounds, we've got the endemic Principe starling, their splendid starling, the weaver Dorn's thrush babbler, or it was thrush babble when we were there. Now I understand it's a warbler. The sunbird in the trees, the Principe sunbird, which we had every morning there in the trees in the garden. Olive sunbird in the bushes around the side of the hotel. Timney parrot every day in the hotel gardens, and blue-breasted kingfisher again. So Principe starling, again, one of the glossy starlings. So really pretty glossy starlings. I think, if I'm honest, are probably what got me into birding when I first went on safari to Kenya and saw these incredible starlings, and they're beautiful. So you take pictures and then you work out what it is you're looking at, and then suddenly you've got a bird list, and then you're going on holiday for endemics. Splendid starling, also really amazing bird, really purple, big white eye, again, fantastically iridescent. Principe sunbird, a bit duller, a bit tended to be much more distant than the Newton sunbird had been on Sao Tome. The African green pigeon, again, fairly standard green pigeon. The olive sunbird, much bigger than the Principe sunbird, much more approachable, lower down on just sort of big shrubs rather than trees. And the Timney parrots tended to be quite distant, but again, something we saw all the time. Well, not all the time, every day. And then Dorn's warbler, thrush babbler, again, one of these birds that is always up to something, really active, interacting with each other. Almost feels like they're checking you off their list as well. But a nice bird, I like them. Basically, they're interesting to be with. And blue-breasted kingfisher, again, another stunner. I think it reminds me a bit of stork-billed kingfisher. It seems to have a very big bill for its size, but again, it's one of the forest kingfishers, so it's tended to be not so much near water. So this is all in the morning. So then we head off up the waterfall trail, some of us. We see the drongo and some interesting reptiles. And then we stopped at this Terreiro Velho, which is an old, like a manor house, really quite an impressive building that is boarded up, but is on the top of quite a high sort of cliff. So swifts and spinetails, which was really good. So on the way there, we see our first chestnut-breasted even negritas. A small group in a flowering tree by the side of the road. Really quite an intense burgundy color. Nice, very nice bird. Again, let us have good views. And then we really didn't see too many birds on this walk. I think one of the problems, certainly for me, is that I tend to be looking at where my feet are on a slippy, steep, rocky path, because you certainly don't want to slip off one of the zigs or the zags. But we did see the little guinea lidless skink, and we saw 3 of these Principe green snakes, which just maybe are 6 feet long, but incredibly thin. A bit like green snakes you get in Africa, vine snakes, I suppose they are there, but non-venomous, but have a bright blue tongue. And then I have no idea what that kingfisher is eating. It's some sort of crustacean, land crustacean anyway, but it was pretty big. So we eventually get to the waterfall, and we are drenched. We are drenched because it's raining. We are drenched because it's humid. And the leader and the two of us decided, sod it, we were getting in. And because we weren't going to be particularly more wet. So, and it was really refreshing. And then we dried fairly quickly. But then on the way back down, there's the Principe skink, so a bit similar to the Sao Tome skink, but again an endemic, and the Principe worm snake, but actually a snake rather than a Sicilian. I thought, to be fair, they look fairly similar. Then we had the Principe Malachite kingfisher, and there seemed to be the feeling was certainly on the way there that when we were there, that this might be a split, but looking at the list, it doesn't seem to be. Cat Legret, the place we saw, Western Cat Legret, apologies, it is possibly the world's worst spine-tail picture, but that's as good as it got. It's very difficult, I think, to take a picture of something going that quickly. And then, of course, we have the Principe seed eater on Principe, which is nice, different subspecies, Rufobruneus. So that was, that's the slaughter at lunch. And then we do see the Principe white eye, but they are spectacularly skulky, quite high up in trees, very small bird, very big leaves, very difficult views. I know that I put that picture on Flickr and people were asking to use it because it's quite difficult, or add it to groups and things, because actually it's not a very photographed bird. And I'm not surprised given that its skulky nature, I have to say. This is the view of sunny Principe. The island at the distance is the Jockey's Cap, which, I think is called Jockey's Cap, which, it is. And that's where the third Principe seed eater subspecies is. Principe is really beautiful. It's lots of forest. It's got lots of mountain or cliffs, and it's gorgeous. It's just from me where it rained a lot. So the next day, the decision was, the plan was that we would spend before breakfast in the grounds and walk to this beach and oh, good grief. When you see a typo, Bom-Bom Resort, which is the next one, which in the pre-departure information said that we could use their swimming pool if we decided that we wanted to have a half day off or a day off, we could use their pool, which to me implies it was next door, not a 4-hour walk away, which is what it was, again, on some pretty steep roads. But we saw the usual birds, I guess, in the morning. But on the way there, we were seeing kingfishers and the gecko. And then we walked back from the resort. We walked back up to the main road to meet the vehicle. And that's where we saw the drongo and the mono monkey, which is probably was introduced to Principe about in the 1600s. So I've counted it on my list. It's been there long enough. So in the morning, so we've got the Principe starling in the garden and the big tree next to where the tables and chairs were, bronze mannequins in the sort of more grassy areas in the hotel grounds, Dorn's warbler there in the tree by the breakfast every morning, and then the olive sunbird on, I have no idea what this plant is, but it had very pretty flowers, and the olive sunbird loved them. Then we saw Principe spearops, which, if you remember the Sao Tome spearops, black cap spearops on Sao Tome, this is just completely different. This is like a negative almost, but similar birds, small parties, very 2s and 3s, 4s, active, grubbing around looking for insects, but a really charming, sweet little bird. It's kind of, I think everybody liked the spearops. It's got a great name. So And then, like I say, the drongo in the middle in the morning. I think that's a tick rather than a tear near his eye. And the two kingfishers that we saw. Um, again, both forest ones, really. The malachite, even though it's malachite, and I always associate them with water. These ones were, well, there's plenty of water, I suppose, falling from the sky. So this is the Principe gecko, and this was the best laugh of the entire trip because I'm walking along, and you know, if you've been in tropical forest and you feel someone in the back of your neck, you're like, oh God, it's a leech or it's something horrible, and I couldn't work out where it was, and it kept. And then obviously somebody behind me saw me trying to scratch things off my neck, and they went, "Stop!" So I take my hat off, and this on the left, that is my cap, and there's a endemic gecko that's obviously, when I've been going through some undergrowth, has fallen onto my cap. So great, really good views of it. I'm not allowed to, you know, take any pictures. Everybody else is taking pictures of it on my head. So then we released it onto the tree, and it was great. Really cute, small, maybe 6 inches, maybe. And then, unfortunately, that's not a kingfisher on the no fishing sign, because I do believe that you should always take a picture of that if you see it. Olive sunbird, actually not in the hotel gardens, and distant monomonkey on the walk up the road. Quite steep climb up, but great, you know, tarmac road. Not raining, plenty, you know, no rush. Just we had a really pleasant meander up the road with pigeons mainly as the birds, and our only time we saw decent views of the monkeys. And some interesting other things. So with lemon doves mainly flying by, African green pigeons being a bit more visible. This longhorn beetle, which is probably 4 inches from the base of its horns to the end of its body, and ridiculously big antennae. And a land crab that was really not for giving up. It was, you know, you can see the size of it compared to that shoe, and it was going to go for it. So the next day we are going to the local islands, because that's where the seabirds are. And then we're going to come round the other side and past Jockey's Cap. And it starts off as the most beautiful day. And we see, we're on the boat, so I'm getting excited because there's a chance of cetaceans. And Stephen will know how excited I get with cetaceans, particularly when we saw a beaked whale, a Baird's beaked whale. But we saw humpback very distantly, very briefly. And then we had 3 waves of dolphins. We had bottlenose dolphins, so the standard bottlenose dolphin, Atlantic spotted dolphin, which was a lifer for me, so that was awesome. And Fraser's dolphin, which was the second time I've seen them, first time in the Atlantic. And then by this time, the wind's up, the weather's a bit rough, the sea's a bit choppy, so quite hard to get any pictures. But we get to the Islas Tinhosas, and there are black noddies, brown noddies, sooty terns, bridal terns, brown boobies, tropic birds, and this other subspecies of the Principe seed eater from a boat on an island. So the two on the left are, you know, it was a bit choppy, but we sort of went past all the mountains, the forested mountains of Principe. So Sao Tome is much more cultivated than Principe in general because of the topography. The Baía des Aguilas, so the Bay of Needles, because it's all basalt spikes. And then we get to these islands that are about for like a couple of hours offshore. And there are lots of noddies and terns, and they're all just being very nice, and we've been able to pick out individual birds. And, you know, if you look above this white splodge, there's a sooty tern, or the black noddies you hear, the brown noddies are there. And there's brown boobies, and there's white-tailed tropic birds, which, you know, You can't go wrong with a tropic bird. And then so bizarrely, this black kite flies through and absolutely flushes everything. So there's just birds everywhere. Which is pretty impressive, to be fair. So then we were back. I do not have a picture of the Principe seed eater from Jockey's Cap because seriously, I managed just about to see it from a distance. So we go back to the hotel and out for as the walk along to a viewpoint where we mainly see more Timney parrots, but the spearops, another gecko, and a low straw-coloured fruit bat, which was about to scoff a banana. So happily, okay. So then we decide we're going to find the Principe thrush, and we fail, to be fair, but we walk and walk and walk and walk through some really interesting, pristine habitat. It's a lot of rain, but you know, you've got to go for it. But we don't see it, and actually we see relatively little on this walk. We see the seed eater, we see the white eye, and it's pretty disappointing. The next day we go looking for the thrush again, so we actually drive to the next resort, get a boat, come all the way back down, halfway down the island again, go have a wet landing, and then walk in pouring rain for this thrush. And there's no sign of the thrush at all. We don't hear it. The guides aren't picking up any sign of it. So it's a bit worrying. The numbers seem to be dropping. So we go back to the hotel, and we go to the next, the sort of the sister resort for lunch, which is very nice, but it takes us most of the day, the rest of the day. This is where we went for lunch. It's very nice. But like I say, there's not a great deal of wildlife this day, but we're all absolutely drenched and knackered. And so the next day is back to Sao Tome. So we, like I say, we have day rooms at the same lodge. We dump our stuff and then we drive, and we're going to the drier northernmost part of the island because we want to try and pick up some of the grassland or more open country birds, I suppose. So in the morning we have the usual, the drongo. Well, I suppose we have the drongo, but we have the usual. This is both starlings, the both sunbirds, the weaver, and the parrots in the ground. And then as we're driving round the coast, we pick up reef herons and green pigeons, yellow-billed kites. But then we're really looking for the widowbirds and bishops, so white-winged widowbird, golden-backed bishop, pin-tailed wida, black-winged red bishop. So some of these are pretty restricted. Angola is the other place to see them. Bizarrely, red-headed lovebird and bronze-nape pigeons. So here we have the drongo. Let's move this. The drongo and Principe starling in nice light. It's amazing how iridescent birds always look so much better in nice light. And Principe weaver again. And this is this is where we go. And it actually still looks like that for lunch. And we then walk from there into some farmland to look for these birds, and we're really successful. We see, I mean, they're not in the best of plumages, but we see the white-winged widowbird, the black-winged red bishop not breeding, the golden-backed bishop without a golden back, but we do see more black-capped spearops, which is great, and we have the lovebirds, which I don't have a picture of. So we then fly back to Lisbon, where we did we overnight in Lisbon? Yeah, and we arrived back in Manchester, and it was raining. Surprise. So we ended up seeing the endemics we saw were the spine-tail, the Sao Tome spine-tail, olive pigeon, green pigeon, ibis, oriole, paradise flycatcher, prinia, and white eye, plus Dorn's warbler, Principe white eye, black-capped spearops, Principe spearops, Principe starling, Sao Tome thrush, Principe sunbird, Newton sunbird, giant sunbird. Although I would have loved to have got a picture of it. It's a really impressive bird. Giant weaver, Sao Tome weaver, Principe seedeater, and the grosbeak. And then the endemic subspecies of the kingfishers and the starlings. Golden-backed bishop, again, I've never seen that. And the island bronze-necked pigeon is found on other islands, but so not endemic. Because Sao Tome and Principe are in the middle of 4 islands, and they're one country, and the ones at each end are in different countries. But we missed, and we only missed 4. So, you know, in the grand scheme of things, I think that's probably quite a good take. But we missed the thrush, but we tried really hard for 2 days, in effect, looking for this thrush. The fiscal, we were in the right place, but we didn't see it. I think the Scottsdale, the trip never went out at night, so I think we were probably never going to see that. And we heard the short tail. We could have had it, but if we were American, we could have counted it, but I haven't. And that's it. I don't know at all how the timing went, but I reckon it probably was about as much as I was supposed to do.